So in Jamaica as well, there wasn't a lot to identify yourself as an African in Jamaica. So do you think that's also a problem when it comes to us identifying as African? Nobody talk about Africa as the model. Well, you get people saying Africa as the motherland and stuff like that, and most people dismiss it again, saying, "Oh no, they're not from Africa." So, is it because there's no actual obvious influence there for us to identify ourselves with Africans, or is it God, I've lost it now. Sorry.
I kind of get what you're saying there. It's okay. I can get, to a certain extent, that shows the power of the influence over us, and if you like, the brainwashing that we went through slavery. It's kind of like if I convince you that there's no such thing as a table, that they are refrigerators. And I then fill the room with tables, and I say to you, how many tables are there in this room? You will turn around and say, none, because you don't identify them as such. So we are surrounded by African history and African culture. Jamaica itself, if it wasn't for the Asante people, there'd be very little Jamaican culture. Ackee, the national dish, obia, we have the language that we speak, kumina drumming. You come from a Maroon community embedded in African drumming, African dancing, African chanting. Reggae music, Jamaica's biggest contribution to world culture, has its root in the traditional forms of African
The
music
dancing, the way how we dance, we express ourselves.
The food we eat, the language, so much of the Jamaican vocabulary originates in West Africa. The celebrations, Jonkuno from John Connie from Ghana. In fact, much of the language in the Caribbean, we say that we speak English, but essentially all we have is the English vocabulary. The structure of the language, the grammatical structure, and so African. A lot of it is West African, with a mix of other European nations like French and so on. So you were surrounded by African culture.
Yeah,
in
but
Jamaica.
yet still we don't feel connected to it as much.
You've been educated to ignore it, to be blind to it, to be ashamed of it. So even when you see it, you don't want to accept it. Surprising how many people from the Caribbean, from across the Caribbean, not just Jamaica, who still deny the fact that Africans were brought there during slavery. They believe that they're indigenous to the region. And I often say to people, well, have you looked on a map to see where Jamaica is? It's in the Americas. Have you then looked to see what the indigenous people from the Americas are?
Yes.
How many of them look like you? We are actually less indigenous to the region than, say, for example, the Europeans. They're not indigenous to the region, but in many cases they did arrive there before us.